Maker Studio LA series, which was executively produced and co-directed by someone you know called James Franco. All right, yeah. And Omission, which was produced by the National Institute of Cinema and Audiovisual Arts, which is an Argentine government film company. He's also written many feature film scripts, most recently for something you've never heard of, is Sony Pictures, and Rabbit Bandini. He's currently developing a series with 360 Entertainment. He's a member of the Writers Guild of America. He often writes and produces commentary on the craft of screenwriting, which means he's not only in the business, he helps people. He helped my daughter. Like, he gave her tips. Like, he said, listen, you should be thinking about this, thinking about that. She valued him for that. He does this across many platforms. He does the Screenwriter's Guidepost column for Script Magazine. He's also co-authored a book called The Pocket Screenwriting Guide, 120 Tips for Getting to Fade Out. So he not only believes in himself as a writer, but he tries to mentor other writers. He holds a Bachelor of Fine Arts degree in film from Miami International University, where his thesis film, The Sellout, earned him the Outstanding Filmmaker Award. He's also been an Academy Nickel Fellowships quarterfinalist, a Final Drafts Big Break semifinalist, and an Austin Film Festival finalist. He was a story specialist at the Writer's Store for 8 years, where he coached 7 different winners of the Industry Inside Contest through the writing process, one of whom's script was acquired by Universal after they went through a bidding war to get the script. So he has really not only been very successful himself, but he's helped a lot of other people to become screenwriters. Can we give a nice hand for Moreno?
Just out of curiosity, how many of you guys are writers outside of this class? None? All right, I wouldn't have raised my hand when I was here either. How many like movies? TV? I want to keep this as informal as possible, so I'm going to tell you a little bit about myself and kind of what it's been like from what got me into this stuff through coming to the beach, being in Mr. D's class, to college, and then being out in LA for the last 15 years. I think the first thing is I still get nervous after all these years. I remember having to sing in front of the class, being late.
Yes.
It never goes away. So in LA, whenever a writer goes to a meeting, the first 2 questions that they get asked are, where are you from and what got you into writing? And for me, those things are directly connected. I'm half from New York and half from Miami. And what I do is I have an origin story, like most writers, that I'll kind of kick off with and then veer away and get into more detail. So the story is that my family is full of film buffs. My dad's Colombian, my mom's Cuban, and pretty much all of them would watch movies all the time. And that was our family thing. And they would watch old movies and classics and a lot of rated R movies that they would let me see when I was like 4 or 5 that I probably should have seen. But I got into it really early on, and we used to film movies and make them at home with all my family as a cast. Then when, you don't know some of this stuff.
No, I don't.
So when I was about 8, my dad went to prison for a major crime. It was at the time the biggest corporate crime in US history until Enron. And it connected everyone from the Bronx Mafia to the Reagan White House. So the FBI were worried that someone would try to kidnap me to keep my dad quiet, and so that's why I moved to Miami and bounced back and forth between New York and Miami for a few years. So that's like the worst time. If any of you have moved while you were like in elementary school, it really sucks. So no one told me that this had happened. I thought he was just traveling a lot for work. And then after he'd actually been away for like a year, my mom just turned around one day and said, so there are a couple things you need to know. Your dad's in prison and we're separated. Do you have any questions? And I was just really shocked. I finally got to see him in like the jumpsuit. He was in this kind of fancy facility. It was kind of like at the end of Wolf of Wall Street, if you've ever seen that movie. It was closest to that. And I remember after I left, I was on a train with one of my uncles, and I was so pissed off that I just kind of threw a tantrum and stormed off the train and like threw up on the platform, and was really angry at my dad. Didn't even want to talk to him. So some time passed, and then he got out of prison, and he took me out, and I didn't want to talk to him. And to try to break the ice with me, he said, you know, there have been 3 books written about what happened, and there's some Hollywood producers that are coming around and they're thinking of trying to turn it into a movie or a TV show. I don't think it'll ever happen because it's too complicated, too many characters, but that's what's going on. And I think he was trying to break the ice with me because he knew that was always our kind of bond, was about this stuff. And I don't know what hit me, I was like 10, but I said, well, if no one makes it, then I will. And that kind of became my mission. And he said, if there's anything I can do to help, I will. So from that age on, every Saturday, he would pick me up and he'd take me to the bookstore, and he'd show me screenplays, and he'd take me to whatever movies I wanted to see, and he'd show me all kind of the crazy classics that he had gotten into. And really, when I'm at a meeting in LA, that is where I then jump and say, and so that's why I'm here now. And that's it, and I skip over everything else. But the truth is, there's a lot more, because by the time I got out of Nautilus and got to Beach High, I was pretty much lost. I was pretty much like a graffiti writing stoner who, you know, once in a while hung out with some of the gangsters and was like the nerd that hung out with the gangsters.
Oh, wait, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but there were gangs here at Beach High, just so you know, when he was here.
Oh yeah, no, like, there were like bloody fights right at the front of the school. It was crazy. Yeah, there was like a big RICO thing, and the FBI arrested like 100 people when I was like a senior, and the person who ran the gang was a Cuban abuelita that lived on Alton Road, and she was running the whole thing. It was crazy. You can look it up. South Beach Posse was what they were called.
Yes.
And so basically, like, by the time I got here, I was still into all this stuff, but I wasn't trying to do anything. Like, I wanted to basically, you know, skip math and science as much as I could, and you know, go to like the Cuban place that used to be over past the K bus stop, and I wasn't that great a student, but I got really lucky because I had 3 teachers here that I just ended up with that all in their own ways changed my life. One of them was Mr. D. I'll get to him last though. Another one was a photography teacher who I think left a while ago, was called Miss Diaz. And I just ended up in her class, and she like gave me a camera the first day and said, go out and take pictures. And so I just started photographing beach, and I still have pictures from like, I'm class of 99. So I was taking pictures here like 95, 96, 97, 98, and that was like that was my introduction to photography, which would pay off. And I took her class so many years while I was here that when I was a senior, there were no more photography classes. So she created a new class just so I could be in it. The second person was Mr. Graff, who was the drama teacher back here. And there was like a really good thespian department. I don't know if it's still here, but it was like a typing class we ended up in because the school sent us to a typing class that had no typewriters. And they put Mr. Graff, so you're laughing. And they put Mr. Graff in charge of it, and he just started teaching us about theater production and how to produce plays. And I was half paying attention, but I guess he saw something in me, and he said, look, if you keep taking my class and you don't skip, I'll give you a B at the worst. And if you try, I'll give you an A. And so I did. And I took his class all the way through and was president of thespians when I was a senior. And then, of course, the third person was Mr. D. And I got lucky because I got him in 9th grade, and he was definitely the most fun teacher I had. And he introduced me to a lot of stuff like Poe and Shakespeare and The Great Gatsby. And I was so jealous of the juniors that were in AP. And I would see on the board, he had, on one side it would say like what the regular English class would have to do for reading and assignments and what the AP class would have to do. And he was like, you guys won't have to read this, but my AP class is reading this book called The Great Gatsby. And The Great Gatsby is basically set in the 20s, but it's about what today would be like a drug dealer. And it's a story about a poor boy who falls in love with a girl who wants to be married to a rich man, so he becomes a drug dealer so he can one day come back and win the heart of this girl. And of course, a lot of things go very wrong, but something about that story resonated with me. And I asked my dad to take me that Saturday to buy it. And and it started copying basically from then on whatever the AP's assignment was. And so I was reading them out of class. So then Mr. D passed me, 10th grade, I had probably the worst English teacher I ever had. I forgot her name, I flunked out of AP, went to summer school, got an A, and then ended up in Dreesen's class in 11th grade, but not AP, just regular. And he did a thing called How to Read a Film. I don't know if you remember that.
I do.
And he would show us all these classic Hitchcock movies, and there was like a great workbook. And he would say, like, there's no dialogue in this scene for 5 minutes, but look at how much you know about the characters just from these shots. And I'd never looked at a movie like that